All right, guys, we're going to be covering the air brake system. This is one of the major components in our Schedule 1. The very first thing that we're going to be covering is audible air leaks and any air loss rate that exceeds the prescribed limit. Now, this is a two-part question. They may ask you for audible air leak, but you also have to check or tell them the air loss rate that exceeds the prescribed limit. Now, in a tractor and a trailer combo, the exceeded rate, a single tractor and a trailer, is 4 psi. If it's just your single tractor, then it's just 3 psi. If it's a double trailer, then it's 6 psi. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be starting this test off by first turning off all of your any audible noises, your four-way flashers or anything like that, and turning your vehicle into the on position. At this point, you're going to ask your examiner if you can use your timer, a stopwatch, or your cell phone as a timer. They're going to say, yes, you can use your cell phone as a timer. So you want to release both of your brakes, your trailer and your tractor, your yellow and your red, because you're checking the whole system of your vehicle. Once this stabilizes, you're going to have a look at your gauges. You're going to look at your primary and your secondary gauges, have a look at the numbers that are displayed. We're reading at about 110 psi, which is good. It's within the normal operating range of 80 to 145 psi. Now, to begin this test, what we need to do is we need to check for two things: an audible air leak, and that if we're losing more than 4 psi or if we're above 4 psi within 1 minute. So go ahead, pull out your timer. My timer's there. Now you're going to turn your tractor off, and you're only going to turn it into the on position. Turn your tractor into the on position. Wait for your gauges to stabilize. Now you're gonna roll down your window. You can also open your door. Depress your service brake. Start your timer. Read out your gauges. Your gauges are reading at about 110 psi, which is good. That means that they're working within the operating range of 80 to 145 psi. You're gonna stick your head out a few times. One, my gauges are still stable. Stick it out again. No audible air leaks detected. My gauges are still stable. You're going to hold this for 1 whole minute. Keeping an eye on your gauges. My gauges are still stable. Again, my gauges are still stable. No audible air leaks detected. After 1 minute, stop your clock. Secure your vehicle. My gauges are still stable. No air loss detected in my gauges, and no audible air leaks detected. If any defects, I'm reading Schedule 1. An audible air leak is a minor defect. I would write it in my logbook, inform my operator, and my vehicle is safe to drive. If my air loss rate exceeds a prescribed limit of 4 psi in 1 minute, then that is a major defect. I would write it in my logbook, inform my operator, and take my vehicle out of service, or my vehicle is inoperable. The next thing we're going to have a look at is our slow air pressure buildup rate. For the slow air pressure buildup rate, what we're going to do is we're going to bring your air pressure past 80 psi. We're also going to ask the examiner if we're allowed to use our timer. Pull up our timer, and what we need to do is we need to check to see if we build from 85 psi all the way to 100 psi in 2 minutes. If your air pressure does not build up from 85 psi to 100 psi in 2 minutes, that's a minor defect. So let's go ahead and complete this test. For this test, we're just checking the air pressure buildup rate of our tractor. Your trailer doesn't build any air pressure, your tractor builds the air pressure. So what we're going to do is ask the instructor or the examiner if we can use our cell phone as a timer. Pull out our timer. We're going to go ahead and start our vehicle. While our vehicle is started, we're going to have a quick reading of our gauges. Gauges are stable at 110 psi. What I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by bringing the gauges down to 80 psi or past 80 psi. So before you do that, release your yellow brake, your tractor brake. Release the brake. Now apply your service brake, which is your brake pedal. All right, our needle is reading at about 75 psi. As soon as it hits 85 psi, we're going to begin this test. So we're at about 85 psi, beginning the test. My RPMs are between 600 to 900. They're within a normal operating range. My gauges are moving up, building air pressure. All right, my gauges have hit 100 psi, which is good. So secure your vehicle, securing my vehicle. Because we only released the tractor brake, we're just gonna pull the tractor brake. I've completed this test. The slow air pressure buildup rate. My slow air pressure buildup rate built air pressure within 25 seconds from 85 to 100 psi. So if there's any defects, I'm going to go through and read schedule 1. My slow air pressure buildup rate is a minor defect. Write it in my logbook, inform my operator, and my vehicle is safe to drive, safe to operate. All right, guys, the next thing that we're going to check is our inoperative towing vehicle tractor protection system. This is basically going to check your tractor protection valve. And to begin this test, what we're going to be doing is we're going to start our tractor. We're going to start it up, have a quick reading of our gauges. Our gauges are reading at about 110 psi, which is good. It's within the normal operating range of 80 to 145 psi. What we're going to do is release our yellow tractor brake. Our gauges are still stable. They're reading between at about 110 psi. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go outside. Grab a hold of our service line, put it right by our feet so that we can hear any audible air leaks. With our window or our door open, we can now hear it. Turn your tractor off. Turn it in the on position, but do not start the tractor. Read your gauges. My gauges are reading at about 120 psi, which is good. They're within the normal operating range of 80 to 145 psi. You're going to depress your service brake. Depressing my service brake. My gauges are stable. And listen for any leaks. There's no leaks coming out of my service line. Listening for leaks. Have a quick look at your gauges. Your gauges are still stable. And there's no audible leaks out of my service line, which means that my tractor protection valve is good. Secure your vehicle, release your service brake, and we're going to go and connect this. Come back inside, inform your examiner that your test was good, there's no defects that are found, but if there were defects, you'd be reading Schedule 1. An inoperative towing vehicle tractor protection system is a major defect. Write it in your logbook, inform your operator, and take your vehicle out of service or your vehicle is inoperable. The next thing that we're going to check is our low air warning system. Our low air warning system, it must be activated above 55 psi. If it is activated below 55 psi, that means that we've got a defect in our low air warning system. So what you want to do is start your tractor. And this specific one, we're not going to be releasing any brakes. So don't touch any of your yellow or your red brake. Make sure that they are applied. In order for us to complete this test, again, like I said, we have to lower our air pressure and hear for any audible alarms. Again, according to our Schedule 1, the audible alarm must come on before 55 psi. If it comes on after 55 psi, that's bad, that's a failure. So let's have a look. What we're going to do is we're going to apply and depress our service brake a few times to hear this audible alarm. So hold it down, keep pressing it, inform your examiner. My gauges are dropping. Low air pressure warning system activated at 60 psi. Let go and try it again. Low air pressure warning system activated at 60 psi, which is good. If there's any defects found, you can read Schedule 1. So in your Schedule 1, low air warning system fails or system is activated below 55 psi. That's a major defect. You're going to write it in your logbook, inform your operator, and take the vehicle out of service. All right, guys, so now we're going to check our push-rod stroke of any brake exceeds the prescribed limit. So this is a pretty tricky question because there's a lot of things involved and there's a lot of tools that are involved. So the very first thing that I would recommend is get yourself familiarized with the tractor that you're going to be taking or the vehicle that you're going to be taking to your examination. The next thing is get familiarized with the tools that you're going to be using. You've got a piece of chalk and you've got a brake chamber measuring tool over here. This may be different than what your class or what you're specifically using, but get yourself familiarized with these tools, okay? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to turn your tractor into the on position. Confirm that both of your brakes are applied, wheels are chalked, and your transmission is in neutral. Now, this test must be completed between 90 to 100 psi. We're sitting at about 100 psi. What we're going to do is we've got to release both of our brakes. The reason why we have to release both of our brakes, the examiner could ask us to check the rears, the examiner could ask us to check the fronts. So release both of your brakes. What you also want to do is turn your wheel all the way to the left. Majority of the time, the examiner will ask you to check the front driver's side wheel just because it is accessible. Now what you're going to do is you're going to lower your air pressure down to 90 to 100 psi. So just press the brake a bit, lower your air pressure. All right, we're sitting at about 90 to 100 psi. Turn off your tractor. Turn your tractor back on. My air pressure is between 90 to 100 psi, which is good to complete this test. Now take both of your tools, your piece of chalk and your measuring tool, open your hood or release the latch to open the hood there. Step out of the tractor carefully. All right, we're going to examine our brake chamber. This is our front brake chamber. Now our brake chamber has a push rod. This guy right here is the push rod. Take your piece of chalk, draw a little line, basically our start point on the push rod, and take your measuring tool and just place it right on top of the bead there that clamps both of the air chamber together. Our push rod right here is a 20. Now you can either have a look at the piece of paper on the back. If that's not missing, memorize it. A 20 has a maximum push rod stroke of 1.75 inches. You're going to confirm that it is also a regular. A regular has a round socket for your air. A long stroke will have a square socket. So we've confirmed that. Tell your examiner that you have a 20 regular brake chamber. You've marked it with a piece of chalk. And now what you're going to do is you're going to get yourself your brake buddy, or in our case, this piece of this guy over here. And it's very, very, very simple to do. Apply your brake. Okay, and you can adjust your steering wheel, apply the brake buddy. Brake buddy's applied. And again, guys, confirm. This is like doing heart surgery. Confirm that your gauges are still within 90 to 100 PSI. This is very, very, very important, because if your gauges drop, that means that you can possibly fail. You want to confirm that your gauges are between 90 to 100 PSI. Grab your tool. And now begin by measuring your push rod length. All right, your push rod total length that I measured was 1.5 inches, which is good. Inform your examiner that your gauges are still stable and that your maximum push rod length was 1.5 inches. All right, guys, take your brake buddy out. Secure your vehicle. Explain to your examiner that your push rod length was only at 1.5, which is good, and it didn't exceed the maximum prescribed limit of 1.75 inches. And if there's any defects, you've now secured your vehicle. You can now read Schedule 1. And then read your Schedule 1. In our case, we have a 20 regular size brake chamber. So our push rod stroke of any brake exceeds the prescribed limit. So again, a 20 regular size brake chamber has a maximum prescribed limit of 1.75 inches. And you measured it at 1.5 inches, which is good. If there's any major defect, again, your push rod stroke of any brake exceeds the maximum prescribed limit. And in our case, it did not. But if there's a major defect, write it in your logbook, inform the operator, and take your vehicle out of service. All right, guys, I know a lot of you guys get confused of which brakes to release and which brakes to apply and what air pressures you should be specifically at, but it's very simple, okay? So for the very first test, our audible air leak test, air loss rate exceeds prescribed limit. This test is testing the whole vehicle. You need to check for any air loss or any air leaks through the whole vehicle. So what you're going to do is you're going to release both of your brakes, your yellow and your red. your tractor, and your trailer. The next one is slow air pressure buildup rate. Your slow air pressure, your buildup rate is controlled by your tractor, not your trailer. Your trailer does not build up air pressure. So what you're going to do for the second one is only release the tractor brake, the yellow brake, to test slow air pressure buildup rate. Push rod stroke of any brake exceeds a prescribed limit. This one here, the examiner can ask you to check the front, the examiner can ask you to check the rear. What you want to do is you want to release both the tractor and the trailer for push rod stroke of any brake exceeds a prescribed limit. You also have to remember that this test has to be done between 90 to 100 psi. The next one is your inoperative towing vehicle tractor protection system. This one here, it says it right over there, your tractor, yellow brake. You only release the yellow brake because you're checking the tractor protection valve, and you also have to remember to remove the service line from the trailer. Your low air warning system fails or system is activated. Both of these brakes must be applied for this test. Both of the brakes must be applied for this test. Inoperative service, parking, or emergency brake. Now this specific test is going to test every single individual braking component. Your service brake, your trailer brake, your tractor brake, and your emergency brake. It's going to check each and every single one of these. So what you have to do is release both of those brakes and check every single component. Okay? Again, guys, go over this, confirm that you understand which brakes control what areas of your tractor, and just write these things down.